Nelson Kawamarish here. I guess this would be called Lisa's dining room, and we'll be going into Lisa's living room in a few minutes. So what this video is about is I want to record start to finish the next weaving project that I'm working on. So just to kind of give you an example of how the projects have progressed. And these are the big projects that I'm talking about, not the belts. This was my first Nagua I wove. A Nagua is the traditional front flap that our people wore. So this is one of our deities, one of our semis by Brahma. And this one came out to about 10 inches, a little over 10 inches wide, and just shy of 9 inches long. And, you know, I had a little blank space on the top and flipped over for a belt. From there, I moved on to this one, which I completed last year. This is our Earth Mother deity, Atabe. And this one, head to toe, was 20-inch design and 13 inches wide. So a little wider and definitely longer. So we're taking a big jump forward here with this next project. This is the design of a good friend of mine and his tribe, Hiwayawa. And this is the design for their tribe, their Nagua is what I'm going to be doing here. And you can see that a couple of things. It seems much larger, but the one thing I want to point out is this is the first time that the border, instead of just a straight border, which is what I've done before, I'm doing a design border, and I'm also adding the border on the top and the bottom. So this is going to be new for me to work on. If I did this design with the same yarn that I've done the other two designs, it would come out too wide and too long. So I've made the decision to use a thinner yarn, a thinner cotton yarn, and I'm hoping that this is going to end up about 14, 15 inches wide and maybe about 15, 16 inches long. There's going to be some fringe at the bottom and then the flap that I mentioned at the top so that they can put the sash or the belt through that. So I wanted to show you what the designs was going to be looking like. Let's come over here to show you where I set up. By the way, here's our next box getting ready for Puerto Rico. So the colors I decided to use for this project is black and red. I'm going to use a black background and the design is going to be in red. I've measured out how long it's going to be, and what I'm doing, I'm going to give myself extra space. The worst thing to do in a project like this where I'm going to be carding, working with over 200 cards, is to get halfway through the project and realize that it's too short, that you didn't give yourself enough length. So not that I like to, I don't like to waste material either, but I'd rather have too much at the end than be short. So I'm going to go with a 5-foot length here. Where's the measuring tape? And what I do is I have 2 chairs here, and I'm going to wrap the yarn between the legs of the chair. So yeah, I'm about 5 feet there. So I take a piece of tape, get the end of the yarn, tape it to the leg. So what I'm going to do is go back and forth, wrap it around each time so from here to here is 1 wrap, coming back is 2. I'm going to need, I have to look at my paper, but I think about 200 wraps of one and about 300 of the other. I'm going to do it 50 at a time so that when I go to separate them, it doesn't get into one big tangled mess. So I'm just going to go back and forth, counting each time. I'll probably stop about 50, 60. I'll go to either that count, or if this spool is finished, as you can see, I have more yarn waiting for me over there. So we're just going to videotape this for a little bit, and then we'll cut the video and go on to the next color when I'm ready with that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm keeping a little tension on the line. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I'm just going to keep going until I get the count that I need. So we'll cut the video here. This is 5 feet long. The last project I did was, I think, 11 or something feet long. So you can imagine me walking back and forth, back and forth. But that's the first step. It's just getting the yarn ready. So we'll stop here and we'll see you later for the black. Bye-bye. Okay, so I'm done with this spool. I ended up doing 58 wraps. So there's a little tail here. I'm going to cut this tail off. Okay, I'm going to grab all these strings, cut them, pull the one, make sure I cut them all, pull the tape off, and I'll walk over here. Pinch it off. Okay, and I just lay them here on the couch until I'm ready to use them. So that's 58, and I'll continue with the other red yarn and then the black. Okay? Hello again. In the last segment, I showed you what it took to get the yarn ready for the loom. I showed you the red yarn. I used 5 spools of the red, and actually I ran out. So I have this project that I had in the attic, so I'll have enough from here for what I need, so I'll be okay. I did the first spool of the black, so it's all laid out over here. And because it's taking up so much space, normally I would have all my yarn ready, but what I'm going to do for this project is I'll do 1 spool of the black at a time, put that on the loom with the red, and then as I need more black, I'll just get the black. I've shown you these before. These are the weights that I use to hold the tension on the loom. These are 3-ounce weights. There's about 100 of them in here, and here's another 100 that I ordered, so I have to open this box when I get to that. Here are the cards that I need. Again, I've never used more than 100, so I had to prepare another 100 cards. And I'll talk about what I'm going to have to do with these here. They're not marked yet. And I had some extras here. So I stack them in groups of 12. And I number them 1 through 12. And someone gave me a suggestion to number them on the other side, so I might do that. I also talked about this before. I mark my cards. So the AD side, when I start the cards on the loom, they're always set up with the AD on top, so the black is showing on top. I mark the AD side black, the AB side yellow, it's a little faded there, the BC side orange, and the CD I don't mark at all. This type of weaving that I'm going to be doing, a double weave, everything is done in 2 sets. Each time you turn them, that's called a pick. So you do 2 picks at a time before you move on to the next line in the pattern. Some cards will get moved forward. Again, moving forward, like if you're riding a bike, it's this way. Some cards will be turned backwards, which is this way. But watch what happens. So they're all starting with black forward. So let's say these cards are turning forward, these are turned back. Again, that's going to happen twice. So forward, back. That brings everything back up to orange. Okay? And then if I do another 2 picks, forward, back, I'm back to black. So if at any time, if I see something like this, I'll see that orange, I know that there's something wrong, and I stop and I fix the error before I go any further. So that's the purpose of marking the cards, especially when you're dealing with so many cards, you want to have a visual cue of what you're doing. So these, like I said, these cards, I just open them up, so they're not marked yet, they're not numbered, I'll have to take care of that. But in the next segment, what I'll do is I'll start putting the black and the red yarn through the cards, and I'll explain how that works. weight them down, and actually attach them to the loom. So I'll see you then. Bye-bye. Okay, Nelson Comedies here. This next segment, I'm going to start putting the yarn on the loom. This is probably the most complicated thing to understand about this type of weaving, and that's a matter of how you put the yarn through the card. So let's talk about that. The first card, there's two ways that the yarn can go through this card. One is where the yarn comes in from the front of the card and comes out through the back, or the other one is where it comes out from the back and comes out the front. Those two are given a name. It's either called a Z thread or an S thread. So if the card is like this, if the yarn is coming this way from the front, this way, that's the letter S. That's an S thread. A Z thread would be this way, coming in from the back. That's a Z thread. This pattern, and it's too complicated to explain at this point, but it's going to alternate a ZS, ZS all the way through. The first card is going to be a Z thread. So again, it's going to come in from the back this way. So I took my 4 threads, my first 4 yarns. Because this is a border card, they're all going to be red, other than the 3 border cards on each edge. 2 will be red and 2 will be black. I line them up. Go through my weight. And then just do a simple overhand knot once and twice to lock it in. So again, this is going to go on the loom. The AD will be on this way, so the black is showing on top, and the yarn comes in from the back, so a Z thread. So let's walk this over to the loom. This loom was initially set up with 180 nails. Because this pattern is over 200 cards, I had to take this top board off and I added more nails, so I have all the nails that I need now. Okay, come over here. And then it's just, again, 2 simple overhand knots to lock this in place. Okay. And what's happening here is when this is done, all 200 cards are going to be on the loom, all tied to this bar. As the weaving takes place, I don't want to have to keep reaching over. I just take this bar and move it. The nails are set 2 inches apart, so I just keep going as the weaving progresses 2 inches at a time. All right, so that's the first card. 202 to go. Bye-bye. Okay, so let's see what's going on here on the loom. I've got my 3 border cards done. And if you recall what we talked about, the first one is Z threaded, so comes in from the back. The next one is S threaded, strings come in from the front. And the next one's Z threaded, and that's going to alternate back and forth. If you take a look at this from this angle here, you'll notice that the cards are angled. The angle that they lay is actually opposite to the way they're threaded. So this is a Z thread, but if you notice, it's angled this way. It's just leaning, it's laying in an S direction. This one was S threaded, but it has a Z slant to it. That's one of the things that makes card weaving difficult, especially if you get books on this. You'll see the S and the Z, and one of the things you have to figure out is with that author that you're reading, when they refer to S and Z, are they referring to the threading or are they referring to the way the cards lie? So that's just something to keep in mind. So here's card number 4. I set it out to the side so we can look at it, but when I'm done, I'll slide it over. You'll notice that this one is not going to be a border card, so it's a design card. So 2 of the holes are threaded with black threads with black yarn and 2 with red. I chose to have the AB holes in black and the CD in red, and that's going to be the same throughout all the design cards. So let's take a look at what happens here. As I mentioned earlier, some of the cards will be turned forward, some of the cards will be turned back. When you turn a card forward, the yarn that's in this hole is the one that's going to show on top. So when I turn it forward, okay, this is the one that's on top. You notice these other 2 are locking in what would be the shuttle going back and forth, the yarn, and you see the red loose on the bottom. When you turn the card backwards, the color that's in this hole is the one that's going to show up on the top. So when I go backwards, here's that one on the top, black is on the bottom, and the 2 middle ones holding in the string that's going back and forth. That also tells you one thing, that whatever you see on the top, the opposite is going to be on the bottom. This is called a double. This is a type of double weave. Whatever pattern you're going to see on the front of the weaving, you're going to have the opposite colors on the back. So that's what I wanted to share with this. This is card number 4. So basically all the odd number cards are Z threaded and all the even number cards are S threaded, and I'll take that all the way throughout when all 203 are on the loom. We'll talk about what to do next. By the way, I did the math. That's going to be 38 pounds on the back of this loom, so it hasn't had that much weight. We'll see what happens. Okay, take care. Nelson Calmarish here. So here we go. This is what a setup for 203 cards looks like. When you set up a project, you want to make sure that everything is correct before you start the weaving process. So as I put the cards on, I believe I mentioned in a previous video that for this project, each card alternates in terms of how do you thread them, an S thread or a Z thread. And as I was setting this up, I made 5 errors where it was supposed to be, let's say, a Z thread and I did it an S thread. That wasn't a big deal. I just put it off to the side, do the correct thread, and continue going. Then what I did is, after everything was set up, I checked every single card. I'm checking for 2 things. I'm checking for the correct threading, which I mentioned, but I also want to make sure that the yarn is going through the correct holes. So for all of these pattern cards, the black strings go through the AB holes and the red strings go through the CD holes. I did find one where I had made a mistake, so I had to take that apart, take the strings out, re-thread them through the card. And again, that's important because if you don't catch that, once you start the weaving, that entire line is going to be incorrect with the color. So with a big project like this, you definitely want to catch that ahead of time. Now, because this is such a big project, I did do a few things differently that I wanted to touch upon. One of the first things was, I did mention that the 3 ounces for each of these cards comes out to about 38 pounds. I was a little concerned that that was going to be a lot of weight torquing this setup. So what I did is I put a C-clamp on either side. So normally I don't do this, but because there's so much weight, I put the C-clamp. So there's one on this side, one on the other side. The other thing I noticed when I set up the project, this bar was over here on these nails. And when I went to bring it back, I noticed it was kind of hard to do. And I'm concerned that this pipe is going to snap from all the weight. So what I decided to do is I left it here. I'm going to try to do as much of the weaving as possible This is going to be about 2 feet long, so I'm going to try to do most of the weaving right here the way it's set up. The other thing that I did, you notice that you have this sort of a V shape with the setup. When you tie the strings here, because of the knots, it widens out. The weaving is actually going to be more narrow than that. I didn't want to fight with the weaving as I start. And in other words, what I'm talking about is when I have the design, I don't want the edges of the design to be squished because I'm trying to get to the width that I needed to get to. So to help alleviate that, I tied this string, sort of putting them in, pinching the strings in a little bit. So now when I weave, because the final weaving is not going to be much narrower than this. So the tension is taken off of this when I weave. So I tied this on. Again, that's something that I normally don't do. I also inserted this pipe, which will sit against this wood. That's going to help keep everything firm here. I also had to create, this is an old beater that I had cut from a previous wide project. None of my regular beaters are wide enough. So this is just a piece of wood that I cut, which clearly is long enough, and I'll be able to feed it through and beat down as I do my weaving. So again, a few little things, when you do projects, you may have to adapt to what you do. And we'll see how it goes. So I will start the weaving, maybe not today, but in the next week I'll start the weaving. Before I start the weaving, I'm going to give this a really good blessing with tabanuco and some tobacco smoke. Sort of ask the ancestors to work through my hands. And when it's done, or maybe sometimes while I'm weaving, I'll videotape that. But definitely when it's done, I will show it to you. Okay, so that's what I have for today. Take care. Blessings. Bye-bye. Nelson Kawamarish here. So what I want to do tonight here, I want to show you one round of this weaving so you can get a sense of what it entails. So if you come over here, I've already started the weaving, as you see. I have the pattern here, so you can tell that I've already done the lower border. I'm working my way up. I got these 2 dots done, and I'm working my way up over here. I'm right up to this point here where you have these lines. Now, each line in this pattern is called a pick. This pattern has 96 picks, it looks like. But I also said in a previous video that you have to do each pick twice. So you kind of have to double that number. So it's about 200 times back and forth that I'll be doing this. So let's take a look at how this is going to work. All right, there's something I want to show you over here. Also in a previous video, I talked about which color is going to show. We talked about if we move the card backwards, again, like you're riding a bicycle, you pedal backwards. This hole here is what's going to show, which is red. If I move it forward, it'll be the black. Okay. So I'm going to come here, look at my numbers. We talked about this where I take that design that I just showed you and I put it with numbers so I know how many cards to turn forward, how many cards to turn black. My pattern cards are the bold numbers, and the background are the lighter colors. So the red are the bold and the black are the non-bold. So I have 3, 3, 21. 3, 3, 21. So the first 3 cards are red, the next 3 cards are black. To get black, as you can see, I have to move it forward. So I'm going to move my forward cards here. So you say, well, why don't you put the 3 over here? Well, I also said in a previous video that my outer cards are always turned the same direction forward. So these, and they're all threaded red. So these 3 cards will always be turned forward. So 3, 3, and now 21. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21. Look at the pattern. 52 cards. So let me just check something again. 21 should be red, so that's backwards. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep these here and move this back. Because the next one is 50-something, and I don't want to move 50-something cards. I'd rather move smaller numbers. So 52 and then 7. So So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52. And then 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 28 and 8. 28 and 8. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. I should say 28, right? 28. I keep going back to the pattern to make sure you don't want to make a mistake. Okay, so 2, 4, and another 4. That's 8. 25 and 3. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 25, and then 3. 26 and 3. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, and 3. Then 3 and 21. So 3. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and 21. So the pattern matches. Sometimes I make a mistake when I write the numbers out, and I'll know because it doesn't match here. Okay. So the 21. What did I say? 26, 3, 3, 21. The 21 should be red. So they're going to go backwards, but these 3 always go forward. So they're going to go with the forward pal. Okay, so now let's switch positions.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so all of these on this side are going to be turned forward. All of these over here are going to be turned backwards. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. And you can just move out. I'll come over here. Forward. Yep, don't want to mess these up. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. And forward. Okay. So now we're going to have to put the weft thread through this pocket here. So let's take a look at what the pocket looks like. All right, you see that? So I insert my beading stick through there carefully. There we go, we open that up. Beat down, make it nice and snug. If you remember from a previous video, I leave a little bit of the string sticking out. That also helps me because if I'm ready to weave and I come to this position and I don't see this loop, that probably tells me that I forgot to feed it through. So I may have to undo what I just did, feed it through. But this tells me that I'm ready, so I'm going to pull that. Now this is where sometimes I forget. So this, once you pull it, now you have to feed through. I'm going to leave a little loop, beat it down. All right, so that was one pick we just went through. So I'll do another pick. I believe we started on the black, so when I do this next pick, when these go forward, all the cards will be orange across, and I'll know that I'm on track. And just take it from there. So 20, looks like it'll be about this far along when it's done. So for those of you who want to do this, join us, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.